it's Joan again. I'm continuing in the Korean and the cow. I'm still on Sura 12, which is Yusuf. I'm ending it out. It's verses 70 to 111. The main theme is the detailing of Joseph's family reunion. It also speaks a bit about how God is a protector. I'm going to begin by reading a praise. O Lord, you are the remover of every anguish and the dispeller of every affliction. You are he who banishes every sorrow and sets free every slave. You are the redeemer of every soul. O Lord, grant us deliverance through your mercy and count us as your servant in salvation. And I did want to mention I had, in the last tape, I said that I had been a slave in Georgia, but I had, that was stopped. It ended in, I think, about 2021, they stopped having me do as tough work. But these verses about protection, it's verse, verse 101, Allah being a protector. And I thought, he is really merciful because regardless of whether you believe in him, he does every day give protection to us through the form of our immune system. And I was going to cover some of what that is. He gives us white blood cells which destroy cancer, and they eat up any infection or disease around. Lymph nodes, which are like a strainer, a filter of harm. A spleen that clots blood if we start to bleed. And also the bone marrow gives us oxygen and stops bleeding. The thymus, it makes 4,500 to 11,000 types of disease fighters. And the nervous system, when we cough, is really triggered by our nerves. So it also helps us fight off disease. So there's about 5 to 7 ways God helps protect everybody. But Joseph was reunited with his entire family, and the last tape, it was just part of it. It talks about, in verses 70 to 76, how someone was accused of stealing and that the penalty for it was arrest, that patience is a virtue in verse 83, that God expects most people to be disbelievers. It says, none despair of Allah's comfort except the disbelieving people. In verse 88, it says, Jacob's family told the government that they were struggling. And in verse 92, it mentions how Allah forgives if you're repentant. They were told to bring the whole family back to Egypt. And verse 96, it mentions that Joseph's father Jacob his vision was starting to suffer. They tried to treat it. In verse 97, the family, I covered that one, where the family admitted that they had sinned against Joseph. So Joseph invited them to Egypt in verse 99. It mentions in 100 that they considered conflict to be a devil. And verse 103 is where it says most people are not believers, and if they are, they're polytheists, which is in verse 108. In verse 107, it says punishment doesn't happen when we're aware. It's when we feel safe and think no harm is going to happen. And the hour isn't swift while what does, it's when you're not alert. In verse 110, it says that severity is not averted from the guilty. So I was going to speak a little bit also about the verse that says they're glad they're not a polytheist. And I've always thought, well, I think God I wasn't Jesus, because it'd be tough to be born and told that you're supposed to be crucified. He went through 40 lashes and 5 piercings, his shoulder, 2 feet, 2 hands, his torso, and his head was crowned with thorns. So he just accepted what people told him from birth. And I did want to mention, I looked up to see if crucifixion was still happening around the world. That's something that Jesus did help with. And it says most of crucifixion stopped under the rule of Constantine in the 4th century AD, but the forms of it still exist. At the period of time when he was crucified, it said thousands of people were having that happen, and they were placed on a 9 by 12 foot wood crossbeam and whipped. So I think that's covering everything. And I did want to mention that for me, why I'm not a polytheist is that nothing really removes sin. Because you can say that, but if someone verbally abuses you every day, it's going to hurt your feelings, and nothing really is going to remove it, even if you know that Christ will forgive the bully. The only thing that removes it is the person themselves when they stop doing the harm.